Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating and private experiences we all have, the pictures inside our own heads. What are they? Are they even real? And what can they tell us about the way our minds are wired? Let's get into it. Go ahead, take a second. How are you figuring that out? I'm guessing you don't just have that number filed away somewhere. Chances are, you're taking a little mental stroll through your kitchen right now, aren't you? Scanning the room, counting the doors one by one. Well, that process you just used, that's exactly what we're investigating today. So that mental picture is what cognitive psychologists call visual imagery. It's basically a stand-in, a mental recreation of a real experience. And it's not just for seeing. You can have auditory images, right? Like imagining a friend's voice, or even smell images, like conjuring up the scent of coffee. But today, we're zeroing in on the visual stuff. Now, for a long time, the whole idea of imagery was, well, it was kind of controversial in psychology. And you can see why, right? It's totally private. I can't see your mental pictures, you can't see mine. So the huge question, the central mystery we're going to unpack, is whether these images are a real, genuine way our brain stores information, or if they're just some kind of side effect of something else going on under the hood. Okay, so to kick off our investigation, we need to know why this matters. What's the big deal about visual imagery? Well, it turns out our ability to create these mental pictures is the secret weapon behind some of the most powerful memory techniques ever invented. Seriously? People have been using this stuff for thousands of years. The ancient Greeks had the method of loci. You might know it as a memory palace, where you mentally place things you need to remember along a route you know really well. Other tricks involve creating totally bizarre interacting images, like a goat smoking a pipe, to link the words goat and pipe. The crazier, the better. Or the pegword method, where you hang items on a rhyming list. And the one thing they all have in common? They absolutely depend on our ability to create vivid mental images.
So why does it work so well? Well, in the scientific world, there are two big competing ideas. On one side, you've got Alan Pavio's dual coding hypothesis. He basically said our memory has two channels, a verbal one and a visual one. Concrete things, like the word book, get stored in both channels, giving you two shots at remembering it. But abstract ideas like justice, they only get the verbal code, which makes them trickier to recall. Then, on the other side, you have Gordon Bower's relational organizational hypothesis. He argued that imagery itself isn't the magic bullet. It's that the process forces us to create more links between things. For him, just picturing a goat next to a pipe doesn't help. It's the interaction, the goat smoking the pipe, that creates a strong memory hook.
So, we've got these two competing theories. To figure out who's on the right track, and to prove that mental images are a real measurable thing, researchers came up with some incredibly clever experiments. Let's look at the foundational evidence. It's like we're putting the mind's eye on trial. All right, Exhibit A, a classic experiment from 1971 by Shepard and Metzler. They showed people pairs of these 3D block shapes. The task was simple. Are these two shapes the same one, just rotated, or are they actually mirror images of each other? Take a look. How would you figure it out? And here's the kicker. What they found was that the amount of time it took people to make a decision was directly tied to how much the object was rotated. The more it was turned, the longer it took them to answer. This was huge. It meant people weren't just using some abstract logic. They were literally mentally turning the object in their head, just like they would with a real object in their hands. Okay, next piece of evidence comes from Stephen Koslin's lab. In this experiment, he had people memorize a map of a made-up island. Then he'd say, okay, picture the map in your head. Focus on the hut. Then he'd name another spot, like the beach, and tell them to scan across their mental map from the hut to the beach, and press a button the moment they got there. And the results were just, wow, unbelievably clear. The time it took people to scan between two spots on their mental map had an almost perfect correlation with the actual distance on the paper map, a correlation of plus 0.97. That's almost a one-to-one match. It's as if their mind's eye was literally traveling across a mental space. This was powerful proof that our mental images aren't just vague ideas. They have real spatial qualities. So, case closed, right? Mental images are just like pictures in our heads. Easy. Well, like any good mystery, there's a twist. because it turns out the evidence starts to show that our mental images are definitely not perfect copies of the real world. I mean, these experiments really make it seem like images are picture-like, don't they? You can rotate them, you can scan across them, they seem to preserve distance. But are they really just perfect little photographs stored in our brains? This is where things get a little more complicated.
Here's the thing. Unlike a real picture, a mental image is already interpreted. Think about that famous duck/rabbit drawing. If you form a mental image of it as a duck, it's almost impossible to then flip it and see the rabbit in your head. And on top of that, our mental images are systematically warped. For example, most people swear that Reno, Nevada is east of San Diego, California. It's not. But in our heads, we kind of tidy things up, aligning states into neat columns, even when reality is much messier.
This led to a huge critique, most famously from a psychologist named Zenon Polishin. He said, "Hold on a minute." He argued that these results might not prove anything about imagery at all. Instead, he said they could be explained by what he called tacit knowledge. Basically, all the unspoken, common sense stuff you just know about how the world works. So Polishin's big challenge was this. What if people in that map scanning experiment only took longer because they know it takes longer to travel farther distances? What if they're just playing along, pausing for the amount of time they think the experimenter expects? This is called a demand characteristic, where the experiment itself subtly tells people how to act. Could the whole mind's eye thing just be an elaborate act? For a long time, this was a really tough argument to settle. I mean, how can you prove what's really happening inside someone's head? Well, the answer finally came when we developed the tech to look directly at the brain while it was working. It was time to bring in our final and most persuasive witness. This is where neuropsychology delivered the knockout punch. Studies using brain scans, like PET scans, found the smoking gun. When people are doing these mental imagery tasks, blood flow literally increases to the visual cortex, the exact same part of the brain you use to actually see things. It gets even more specific. Imagining a face, that lights up the part of the brain that processes faces. Imagining a place, that lights up the place processing area. The hardware for seeing and the hardware for imagining are the same.
And this just demolishes the "it's all an act" argument. As researcher Martha Farah put it, for this to be a trick, someone would have to know which precise part of their brain is used for vision and then consciously decide to send more blood there. And, well, that's just not something people can do. The brain activity is real, it's measurable, and it's not being faked.
So, our investigation has pretty much confirmed it. Visual imagery is a real, bona fide brain process. But this ability goes way beyond just picturing a goat smoking a pipe. It's actually fundamental to how we understand and move through our entire world. See, visual imagery is a crucial piece of a much bigger puzzle called spatial cognition. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It's the study of how we build these mental maps of our surroundings and use them to get from point A to point B without bumping into things. And according to researcher Barbara Tversky, we actually think about space on 3 different scales. First, there's the space of the body, knowing where your arms and legs are without having to look. Then there's the space around the body, everything within your immediate reach. And finally, there's the space of navigation, those huge environments like a city or a college campus that are too big to see all at once, so we have to stitch them together in our minds using memory and imagery. And this brings us right back to where we started. The way we stitch together that big space of navigation, it isn't perfect. Just like the Reno/San Diego mistake, our minds create what Tversky calls cognitive collages, not perfect blueprints. We mentally straighten out curved roads. We align things that are actually crooked. We tidy up the messy details of reality. So the big takeaway is this. Our internal visual world isn't a perfect copy of the outside world. It's a structured, simplified, and beautifully distorted model of it. And that leaves us with one last big question. What does that gap, that space between objective reality and our mental picture of it, really tell us about how we construct our own experience?